Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for inviting me, SPA, to speak today. So, Jean-Pascal mentioned briefly earlier that government only make things more complex for industry. And so I'm really sorry to say that I'm proving that point today with my presentation, which is on the upcoming regulatory changes in the packaging sector. But first, there's a new kid on the block. So I just wanted to introduce myself very briefly. Many of you will know Annie Barnettson, who's my predecessor at CPI, Confederation for Paper Industries. Andy's still very much at CPI, but he has moved into a new role as Director for Competitiveness, so working on trade, skills, apprenticeships, and promotional activity such as Beyond the Box that many of you are aware of. Just a bit about me. So I've worked in Parliament previously, working on recycling and waste policy for the opposition party. And more recently, I've been head of packaging at British Glass, the trade association for the UK glass industry. So this is my second SPA conference, but first time on stage. So I just wanted to say thank you to many of you for warmly welcoming me into the industry already. And I look forward to meeting many more of you in the next 24 hours and beyond. In my short time at CPI, I've already recognised the important partnership between CPI and the SPA, so I'm really pleased that the SPA are hosting the UK Corrugated Industry trade show in association with CPI, and I know Tim will be speaking more on that later today. Anyway, let's move on with my presentation. So I want to focus on the upcoming regulatory changes in the packaging sector. So these are once-in-a-generational changes. These all fall under the umbrella of the collections and packaging reforms. So many of you will be familiar with these. So we've got extended producer responsibility, we've got simpler recycling, we've got deposit return schemes, amendments to the PRN system, and also there's the plastic packaging tax. But my focus today will really be on EPR, extended producer responsibility, and simpler recycling, because there have been a number of updates since the last conference. So the good, the bad, and the ugly of simpler recycling. So initially, when consistency of collections was first proposed over 5 years ago now, the packaging industry saw these as pretty positive. So finally, English local authorities would follow the lead of our Welsh counterparts in driving a consistent approach to the collection of dry recyclables at the curbside. However, there's a lot that's happened in 5 years. The consultation was published about 30 months ago, and we've recently had the proposals from the government on that consultation. So the good. So really good news. All local authorities in England will have to collect paper, card, glass, metal, plastic, food waste, and garden waste from the household by the end of March 2026. And businesses will have to do very similar a year earlier, so from March 2025. However, it goes downhill quite quickly. So the bad, so DEFRA have proposed exclusions from the list of dry recyclables to be collected, and this includes paper that is laminated. So essentially, if this proposal becomes reality, no laminated paper will be collected from households, and huge quantities of material will be lost from the circular economy. And this ignores the fact that many local authorities are already collecting laminated paper and in turn recycling that material. So we're working with key trade associations like the Food and Drink Federation, the British Retail Consortium, Inkpen and others to engage with DEFRA and encourage them to look again at this proposal. So on to the ugly. So most concerningly for CPI is that government proposals allow all dry recyclables to be collected together in a single recycling bin. So currently local authorities have to prove that it's not technically, environmentally and economically practicable to collect dry recyclables separately, but this is coming to an end. We all know that paper and card need to be collected separately in order to avoid contamination and ensure our material is not lost from the circular economy. So we've been, again, engaging with DEFRA very heavily on this. We've submitted FOI requests. And despite government proposing that commingled collections have no substantial impact on the rates for paper and card streams in commingled collections, so the government data shows that contamination rates for paper and card streams in commingled stands at 15.5%, 15.5%. When paper and card is collected separately, it's just 1% contamination. So DEFRA's own data shows that it's better to collect these materials separately. These are only proposals at the moment, and so again, we're engaging with DEFRA, but this is a challenge, especially after Sunak's political repositioning on environmental policy last September, where he opposed he opposed policy on multiple bins. So let's move on to EPR. So this is the key focus of my presentation today, because there are potential real direct implications for sheep plants. Many of you will know the basics of EPR. So this is about producer pays principle. So the producer will cover the full net cost of packaging placed on the market, and it will cover the cost of collection and bin litter. And DEFRA predicts EPR will raise around £1.7 billion a year, but that could be far higher, probably £2.5–3 billion a year from industry. A scheme administrator will be set up to administer the scheme, and critically here, that EPR needs more data. So DEFRA are asking industry for far more data to make this scheme work. So unlike the existing PRN system many of you will be familiar with, where there is a shared point of compliance across the whole supply chain, when it comes to EPR, there will be a single point of compliance. So that single point of compliance, that single point of obligation, will be responsible for data collection, data reporting, and also potentially paying EPR fees going forward. So typically, the brand owner of a packer filler will be responsible for these obligations, these data reporting and paying EPR fees. However, there may well be cases where sheep plants, as converters, will be responsible for EPR. And the first point of working out your obligation is understanding whether you are a large or a small organisation under the EPR regulations. So you're a large organisation if you are handling or supplying over 50 tonnes of packaging a year, and if your turnover is over £2 million a year. And DEFRA have also informed us quite recently that the Environment Agency will publish a list of large producers to assist businesses in understanding whether their customers are above or below the de minimis. So that will help you understand whether your customers are above or below the de minimis. And I do apologise, because I know these slides aren't going to be winning any design awards, but this hopefully is useful information for you guys going forward. So if your business has not yet considered its EPR obligations, I would really urge you to do so, given that there are now mandatory obligations in play. So this is just to give you an idea of what your obligations might look like as a large producer. So you must collect and report certain packaging data every 6 months, and then you may also be required to contribute to recycling costs or EPR costs from October 2025. So although EPR will incur no fees until next year, data reporting is now mandatory. So you must be collecting certain data on your packaging from either January or at the very latest March last year. And deadlines for data reporting are the 1st of October for the first half of the year, or 1st of April for the second half of the year. Although because EPR is new, the Environment Agency have said there'll be no enforcement action taken as long as you submit your data for 2023 by the end of May this year. And as part of this process, you must also register through the reporting packaging data portal on gov.uk. So the key thing I really wanted to focus on today and make sure you're aware of is that very recently, just in the last month or so, DEFRA have recently published several amendments to the EPR data reporting requirements, which will potentially impact sheep plants. So therefore, even if you felt confident with your 2023 data reporting, your data submission, and I really applaud you if you did, DEFRA have thrown a spanner into the works for your data reporting in 2024. So until recently, everyone's understanding was that suppliers of empty packaging classed as large organisations would be obligated only when selling to customers classed as small organisations or below the de minimis. However, DEFRA now state that suppliers of empty packaging will now be obligated if they supply empty packaging to any organisation unless their customer is a large organisation that is packing or filling, or if the packaging ultimately ends up being placed on the market by a large brand owner or packer filler. So for example, if you're a sheep plant classed as a large organisation, supplying empty packaging to a brand owner classed as a small organisation or a wholesaler of any size, the obligation will fall onto the sheep plant. And so if you are obligated in the above scenarios, you must collect and report data on your packaging. One piece of good news is that your EPR fees will only apply to household packaging. So household packaging is defined as primary and shipment or e-commerce packaging. Secondary packaging and tertiary or transport packaging will by default always be defined as non-household packaging, and therefore there will be no fees, no EPR fees on the non-household packaging. But of course, e-commerce is a big area for us, and so that is still a concern. I guess just before I move on, I recognise these data reporting requirements are, at best, incredibly burdensome for businesses, and at worst, practically impossible, really, to administer. So this is a real challenge. You know, as I've said, if you're supplying a merchant, you'll be expected to know the final destination of that packaging in terms of whether it's household, non-household, primary, secondary, tertiary, or shipment packaging. So I and CPI are working with compliance schemes. We're working with many, the Packaging Federation and others to make sure DEFRA are aware of the complexity of the supply chain and asking them to reconsider. So the future. So data reporting will continue. These amendments that I've described are set to go live in April this year. And will apply to data reporting in 2024. And we also hope that DEFRA and the Environment Agency will provide greater clarity in the coming months. But there may well be further amendments, there may well be further changes to timelines, so that's something to please be aware of. We're also expecting further clarity on EPR fees. So in the next few weeks, we're expecting DEFRA to publish illustrative base fees for the first year of EPR starting in October 2025. So for the first time, businesses will have a better idea of what the actual costs may be for your business. The existing PRN system will continue and will align with the EPR system from next year. And therefore, there will be a single point of compliance for EPR and the PRN system. And finally here, eco-modulation is set to be introduced from October 2026. So EPR fees will be based on the recyclability of your packaging. So final slide. I know this is, using a Back to the Future reference, this is heavy. So I just wanted to finish on a lighter note. This is to draw your attention to the Paper Industry Packaging Gold Awards 2024. Entries have been open since November, but entries close this Friday. So please get your entries in. This conference is all about people, so I wanted to draw your attention to the Paper Gold Medal Award, that final category there. This is to to recognise the contribution of an individual to our sector. So please do consider entering the awards. As I say, the deadline is this Friday. The awards themselves will be announced in London at Stationers' Hall on the 21st of May. But in the meantime, as I say, please do consider entering. There's so much to celebrate across our industry. And please make sure your efforts are recognised by entering the awards today. So thank you. That's all from me.